If it isn't apparent by now, I love video games, I know, shocker, and when I play games, I approach them cognitively, meaning that from point A to B, I'm scrutinizing every single aspect of it. The music, the art, the gameplay, controls, how I feel in that moment, but for a majority of video games out there, the wild ride has to come to an end at some point. And what occurs in the final moments of a game really cements the experience that we've had. Endings are incredibly important. That's what we're going to talk about today, my top 10 worst NES game endings. Now before I do this, I do want to say there are an incredible amount of NES games out there, and no, I haven't played them all. So please take this list with a grain of salt, be patient, and understand that I'm just a boy. Also, spoiler alert, right? Let's use common sense. I'm discussing game endings, so if you don't want to see the endings, then you probably should avoid this episode. Let's begin. I love Bobble. It's one of those Taito arcade games that really sticks with you, at least it did with me. It's easy, cheesy, and just good, clean fun. All we have to do is play as either Bub or Bob, blow bubbles, and then pop said bubbles, and once we pop them, we get treats. It's a tried and true game from a legacy game company. But have you ever tried to beat this game? It's a fucking nightmare. In a normal playthrough, we have 100 levels, fine, whatever. So say you sit through that, you'd be greeted by an ending that says, "Bad end, this is not a true ending. Take the magical crystal ball, and you will find the door to Secret Road." Why are you yelling at me? I'm a kid with bubbles and dragons, but fine, let's go back to level 99, get this stupid little crystal ball. Surely, we can beat the game now, right?
Bad end! This is not a true ending. Try again with your friend.
Jesus Christ, not gonna do the whole game over again with a player too! Well, if you manage to do that, and of course get that stupid little magic ball we talked about, surely then, we can get this elusive true ending, right? Well, yes and no. You'll get the happy end, which is great, but then it mentions,
"Congratulations, Bobby and Babby, you saved your lovers Betty and Patty at last, but your adventure is not over yet."
What the fuck? Well, there is a super mode. You have to input a code to unlock it, so you get even more levels. So here we go again. Player 2, get the ball, and then, and only then, we see the true ending to Bobble.
Congratulations! Now you found the most important magic in the world. It is love and friendship.
Chill the fuck out, Vin Diesel. I just wanted to play a puzzle game, and here we are, experiencing an ending that I don't feel is worth it. Data East is one of those powerhouse companies that really competed well against the other leaders in the arcade spectrum during the 80s and 90s, such as Namco, Sega, Nintendo, Atari, you know, the usual suspects. And they did try hard to put out quality arcade games. Burger Time, Bump and Jump, Karate Champ, they did a lot. They even pioneered this badass system known as the DECO cassette system, or DECO. Now, many of you might not know about it, but it was essentially a cassette tape with an arcade game on it. Introduce your key module into it, turn on the machine, and the contents of the cassette could be flashed to the cabinet's RAM. It's something that would inspire SNK with their Neo Geo cabinets in the future. But one of the games that stood out is Karnov, a big old Soviet giggle tits that goes on a quest to find the ultimate treasure, which is kind of concerning because I guarantee you the dude can't even find his neck. But hey, there's treasure out there, we're gonna find it. As a platformer, it's literally a run to the right and blast the hell out of everything, and it's not easy, right? It's actually quite challenging, which is why when you beat the game and it says, "Congratulations, the end," you're left sitting there scrunching your face. Where's the treasure? I just killed a fucking dragon. Where's the treasure? You won't find it. Karnov would make more appearances in future Data East games, though, so he didn't get lost to time. This is a well-known game, mostly because the ending screen is a very popular NES quote, a winner is you, or not so much the ending screen, more so the interim match screen. But I will say, wrestling as a video game theme, it was tough to pull off. We had two buttons, a D-pad, a select and start button, so what does that mean for wrestling? It means that companies had to come up with unique ways to make their wrestling games not look like two homo-flexible dudes slapping the shit out of each other, and that took some time. To me personally, it wouldn't be until the end of the NES era where wrestling made sense. In fact, out of all of the wrestling games on the NES, the one game that made me not want to pull my hair out was WWF Steel Cage Challenge. But this game, it was the third wrestling game on the NES, and one of the first to have an in-ring referee, which does count you out if you exit the ring. It's not a bad game at all, it's just very basic. We do a few matches, then we take on King Slender. Unless we're playing as him, then it's Giant Panther. Once we do that, we become the champion of the Video Wrestling Association. But then the second half kicks in, and we have to defend our title. And once you beat the final fight in pro wrestling, which many people consider to be one of the most difficult boss fights on the NES, we get a, "Congrats, you're the VWA VWF champion." And that's it. Good job, high five. Kisses. Castlevania II is oftentimes considered the black sheep of the franchise. You'll notice that historically, throughout video game history, and I guess in some ways film history, there is a lot of attention on the second entry in a franchise. And I don't want to be callous, but 80% of the sequels do not accurately represent the same hype or economic effectiveness of the initial game or movie. So developers really have to buckle down and dig deep to keep that hype going, and it's not easy. I don't envy the amount of pressure that those developers have. Konami historically was a wonderful company, and I do say historically because now they're shit, right? But that's neither here nor there. Castlevania was one of their first solid franchises. Castlevania 1 alone sold at least 2 million copies, so when it came time to continue it, there was a baseline expectation. Unfortunately, Konami pulled a Nintendo and made their second entry for a legacy franchise an action RPG, much like Zelda and Zelda 2, which wouldn't be a big deal if there weren't so many translation errors. In an interview with Hitoshi Akamatsu, the father of Castlevania, he mentioned that he wanted to create Castlevania 2 to be like Konami's game Maze of Gallius, or Nightmare 2, for those of you who watched the Series Slayer episode all about it, which I'll go ahead and link down in the description below and at the end of this video. What made Maze of Gallius stand out so much is that there was a rather large instance to explore. We were not isolated to linear levels. We needed to understand our environment, and people ate it up. That's why Maze of Gallius is one of the most successful MSX games out there. But Castlevania 2, it's Nintendo Power, the game. Those translation issues paved the way for us struggling to learn where to go and what items to use, which wouldn't usually be a big deal if the ending wasn't tied to how long we took. There are effectively 3 different endings, and it goes based on how many nights pass in the game. The optimal ending has us beating it in under 8 days, which would be impossible if you weren't using a guide or if this was your first time playing it. Most people will get the 8 to 15 day ending, or the over 15 day ending, of which both features Simon's death to me, which is kind of just lazy. Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles is a game that will make you cry against the wall in the fetal position. It's a mean-ass Konami game, and let me tell you, it's pretty fucking fun. Many folks kind of push away from it because of the dam level, but once you learn which turtle to sacrifice to the electric seaweed, you're good to go. You're gonna get that character back anyway in the airfield stage if you check the hangar. And then from that point on, it's all about surviving the Technodrome, which in my opinion is eons harder than the dam could ever dream of being. Now, the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles itself was created in 1983 by Kevin Eastman and Peter Laird. The whole principle is 4 turtles are exposed to a toxic jisms that turns them into humanoid turtles, where they are taken in by a mutant rat named Splinter and taught the skills of ninjutsu. That's cool, but hey, the ending focuses more on Splinter himself. Now, if you know anything about Master Splinter, in the base origins of the comic from Mirage Studios, he was a pet rat that learned ninjutsu by observing the motions of his master, Hamato Yoshi, who was killed by the Shredder, and then mutated by exposure to some pathogen, or ooze, likely the same as the turtles. And I'm not a big fan of the turtle lore, right? I don't know much about it, but I will comfortably say that from the traditional narrative, Splinter has never turned back into a human. But for whatever reason, Konami decided to make the ending of Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles feature exactly that. And it's so off-putting too. He says, "You defeated Shredder and saved the world. Now I can turn back to human form. Thanks, you guys. You have excelled my skills." Then April says, "Oh, Splinter is back to his real form. You guys are great. Thanks for your help. Let's celebrate with pizza." Then you get told the adventure of the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles is concluded. You know, yeah, cool story, bro. You could have done anything, but you broke off from the source material for a one-off plot device. Cool beans, Konami. Cool beans. Oh boy, one of our community members is obsessed with Athena, specifically Big Rud 9346. It's almost an inside joke where he'll pop in on days where I don't know what to play, and then he'll suggest Athena. So Ruddy, if you're watching this, just know I still hate this game. Now, Athena, actual Athena, is a goddess associated with wisdom, warfare, and workmanship. Then SNK said, hey, that's a cool name. Let's give her some sandals, a sword, and a bikini and send her off to do justice. And thus a franchise was created. Athena, from SNK's perspective, is a princess of the Kingdom of Victory. She gets bored and decides to open the forbidden door and enters the fantasy world where this grade A fuckwagon Dante is oppressing everyone. And because that doesn't align with the princess's virtues, she sets off to fuck him up. Now, in the arcades, this game isn't bad, but on the NES, SNK outsourced to Micronix. Have you ever gone to a liquor store and wanted to get some Jack Daniels but realized you don't have as much money as you need, right? So the only thing you can do is keep going vertically down the shelf until you get to the cheap stuff, the Kentucky Gentleman, Military Special, you know, the stuff that's probably biofuel, but no, that's still too expensive. Let's go even further down, beneath the linoleum, under the catacombs, beneath the Earth's crust! And there it is, Micronix, development studio of computers with people who haven't seen society in 500 years. In other words, Micronix created some of the most depraved bullshit versions of games that they were trusted to port, and the only one that I enjoy is 1942. If you play this game, you'll constantly be gangbanged by a barrage of bullshit from every comprehensible direction, and in the end, we're graced by her just standing there. It's like you want to pick up a stick and poke her. Do something, move, blink, breathe, step forward, do anything! Please, Athena, I beg you! Now, before we continue, I do want to point out that we're currently working towards a major milestone of 8,000 subscribers, and if we accomplish that, I'll make a special video the community's choosing. Currently, roughly 63% of the folks watching my videos aren't subscribed, so feel free to join the community. It's a great time, and I'd love to have you here. Let's get back to the action. Well, this game lives in infamy for a few reasons. A, it's bullshit. B, it was created by the pioneer of the industry, David Crane, for home computers before Bit Laboratories shitted out on the NES. And C, it's the most egregious and hilarious example of English that was present on the NES. Now, I'm not going to rehash how the game works on the Commodore 64, which it was natively created for. Instead, I'm going to talk about the NES version. Basically, from the get-go, Zool is powering up and summoning ghosts to power up their PK energy. We need to drive to the shop, get some gas, set some traps, rinse, wash, and repeat until we unlock the Zool building, or 550 Central Park West for those who watched the movie. We climb the stairs, which is one of the worst action sequences I think I've ever seen in a video game, but if you have a turbo controller, it's whatever. We tackle Zool, and the game is over. To me, this is a disaster of a time. Literally nothing comprehensible occurs during the game, and it's 100% a slog of a time. And after we suffer so long, all the tedious, asinine tasks we have to do to get to Zool and beat them, we get graced by a wonderful message. Congratulations, you have completed a great game and proved the justice of our culture. Now go rest our heroes. And then we get credits, but between me and you, I'm kind of shocked they know how to spell their own names. This is one of my favorite NES games, and I feel in some ways it's due to retro goggles, a little bit of nostalgia for me. It is one of the first NES games I ever played. It started my passion for vertical shooters, and some might say it's basic, but basic is good if the game plays well, and for the most part, it does. The only issue I ran into with it was that the NES sometimes doesn't render sprites for the shots due to the limitations of the console, but that doesn't tend to happen much. Again, Micronix developed this particular version, and compared to their other suppositories of sadness, this one is fairly decent. We go through 32 levels, piloting a P-38 Lightning, going up against A6Ms, Key 61s, Key 48s, and a few boss levels involving a G10 November. And once we've powered through it all, we just get told, congratulations. Not plural, singular. To me, there's some balance that needs to be addressed when you're challenging a consumer to beat your product. If the game is hard, take the time to make the ending badass. Ninja Gaiden, historically recognized as one of the most difficult franchises on the NES, had an exemplary ending, all three of them did, thanks to the storytelling ability of Tecmo at the time. So why not care? Because it's Micronix! They don't care! By the way, if you want to see the best NES endings video, I'll go ahead and link it at the end of this video and down in the description below. It's the companion episode of this. This is a game that gets a bad rep, and trust me, I was in the same boat as well. Growing up before I had the chance to play these games, the only real way of knowing how they were was by watching the Angry Video Game Nerd or Pat the NES Punk, but I much prefer AVGN. I feel most people do anyway. It would be a long time before I would take the time to question how he felt about the games, but once I beat Jaws, it kind of clicked. The nerd is a character. Maybe these games aren't as bad as he says, and yeah, I was right. Now, Friday the 13th is a tough-as-nails game. You really have to understand how the game operates and commit 100% of your attention from the moment that the game starts. Immediately going towards your objectives, staying alive, caring to not take excess items, because once you do, they're not going to respawn. So unless you're using one character the whole time, you need to make sure you don't take keys or weapon upgrades. Jason himself, it's an easy fight pattern to understand, but the tough part comes into play when he attacks you in the open because you don't really expect him and it does feel cheap. Once you beat him, you have to do it 2 more times over the course of 2 more days, which again is not easy. Once it's all said and done, we get told, "You have finally managed to defeat Jason. But is he really dead?" We're not telling! End. Fine then, weird child of the 80s, keep your secrets. I don't want to hear them anyway. Fuck you. The final game on our list is a literal definition of struggling to earn that ending. When we rack and stack difficult games throughout history, there are ones that stand out. Ninja Gaiden, the Souls games, the good ones, the bad ones like Silver Surfer, but fairly consistently when we talk about retro games, Ghosts and Goblins pops up. I actually dreaded playing Ghosts and Goblins for a while because I knew that the NES game was somewhat of a downgrade from the arcade version. And if you ever get a chance to play it on the arcade, it is wonderful. In fact, the high score screen has some of the best music I've heard in an arcade game to date. Check this out real quick. Lovely. Now, if you've ever played Ghosts and Goblins, you know this is not a game you can finish once. You need to finish it twice. Why? Because it's a twofer game, and from what I understand, all of them are. I've personally beaten Ghosts and Goblins, Ghouls and Ghosts, and Super Ghouls and Ghosts. My next game is the one on the Wander Swan, and I'm sure I'll get to it at some point, but on the NES, it's a chore. The first cycle has us fighting Satan, and we get told that the room is an illusion and is a trap created by Satan, so go ahead, dauntlessly make rapid progress! Now, I will say if you manage to beat the first loop, there is some kind of weird muscle memory that you inherently have, and while the second loop might be more difficult, it kind of feels the same, so you're invested in it. It's a cool psychological effect. And should you find the cross or the shield or whatever's required, it changes game by game. Sometimes you need a bracelet, sometimes you need a cross, sometimes you need a shield. But in this particular one, it's a cross or a shield. I don't remember, it's been a while. But at the end, we meet Princess Prin Prin, and we're told, you ready for it?
Congratulations! This story is happy end. Thank you. Being this wide and courageous knight that you are,
Extra space.
you feel strength welling in your body. Return to starting point. Challenge again.
It's probably Arthur with an erection. He's getting some booty tonight. He earned it. And that's it for today's episode. What game endings really let you down as a kid playing the NES? Feel free to tell us down below. I know the community will do a wonderful job of sharing memories, and who knows, maybe you'll share an idea with someone else. Speaking of our community, if you made it to the end of this episode, you're already home in our community. We're a group of folks who love remembering a time when life was just a little bit easier to live, and if that's something you vibe with, then feel free to subscribe. Finally, the single most important thing you can do for me is to hit that thumbs up button, as it directly impacts the visibility of the videos and the projects that I work on every single day. As always, from my family to your family, good energy, good vibes. Fortefyre out.